More on this, let's welcome now our Washington correspondent Josh Raltenberg. Aloha, Josh. Thanks for joining us. First off, where does the country stand in light of these recent mass shootings?
Yeah, just another tragic weekend here in the United States. You had 5 people that were killed yesterday in Philadelphia. You had 3 killed in Fort Worth, Texas at a festival. And then over the weekend, you had 2 people that were killed, 30 total that were shot in Baltimore. So the gun violence epidemic is just continuing to get worse in this country. A nonprofit, Gun Violence Archive, says there's more than 330 mass shootings in America already this year. President Biden speaking out about that today, and he released a statement with the White House basically calling on congressional Republicans to come to the table for common sense gun reform. He's called for the reinstituting of the assault weapons ban. He's called for safe storage when it comes to access to guns. He's called for an end for the immunity of gun manufacturers. And also he's asking for universal background checks. But obviously this is something that has just been a hyper-partisan issue here on Capitol Hill. Republicans not interested in any of that whatsoever. But the president also marking the 1-year anniversary of the deadly Highland Park shooting that took place this time last year, where 7 people were killed for a July 4th event. The president praised Illinois for getting rid of assault weapons back in January. And as we just got done saying, that's something that he would like to see nationally, but unlikely to happen.
Now, speaking of President Biden, how is he and the First Lady marking this 4th of July holiday?
Yeah, so President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden spoke earlier today with the National Education Association. This is the nation's largest teachers union. Speaking remotely from the White House, the president talked about the need for raising teachers' pay when it comes to the importance of teachers' unions and also student loan forgiveness for public service jobs. He also spoke about gun violence, basically saying that arming teachers in schools is not the answer. And then when he talked about banning books, he said that that's not who we are. Now, the First Lady also spoke. Obviously, she's a teacher. She's going to be going into her 39th year of teaching. And she said that her husband, President Biden, is the quote-unquote education president. Now, later tonight, the president and the First Lady will be hosting military veterans and their families for a number of barbecues, as well as an event to celebrate the 4th of July, including watching fireworks from the lawn.